Good afternoon, and welcome to Forward Team Daggett 2020. I am Antonio Tony Daggett, a retired United States Army Colonel Chaplain with over 36 years of military service.
And I'm Vida Daggett, the wife of the Colonel for 37 years, and we are the natural parents of 10 children, 8 sons and 2 daughters.
Many of you are aware that I am a candidate and therefore running for the United States Congress House of Representatives congressional seat in District 1 of Indiana. Lake and Porter counties are included in that district, as well as portions of LaPorte County.
We're the campaign headquarters of Forward Team Daggett 2020, and we're here to bring information and provide context for things that are happening locally, nationally, and globally. So far, we've brought information to you such as voting by mail, providing PPE for hospitals, and the impact of the state lockdowns on military veterans. These programs can be viewed on our YouTube channel. Before we go into our topic of the day, if you want to follow us and maybe ask some questions, you can find us on www.electdaggett.com. That's www.electdaggett.com. And please be aware that the primary election voting date has been changed to June 2nd. You can still vote on May 5th. That's early voting, but the actual election date has been changed to June 2nd. If you want to follow us on Facebook, just put in Antonio Tony Daggett. For those of you that like to follow Instagram, Antonio.Daggett, Twitter, Antonio Daggett. To find us on YouTube, Forward Team Daggett. And if you like listening to podcasts, we're on Breaker, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. Just put in Forward Team Daggett 2020.
Thank you, Vida. You know, we are looking at issues that are affecting us globally, and right now, the biggest issue right now is the pandemic.
Yep.
And the priority for all nations should be to stop the spread of the pandemic. Some of the issues around the pandemic, I think, are things we will need to look at. We will need to look at how the pandemic got started initially, because it's clearly believed through documentation that the virus cannot spread from animal to human. But also, we need to look at policies that will need to be put in place to ensure that we don't find ourselves as a nation, as a world, in the same situation just a few years from now.
Sure.
So the issue with dealing with stopping the pandemic has to start with the fact that we're calling for all nations to put down arms. Any nations that are at war with one another, they really should put arms down, put that aside, so the pandemic can be dealt with. Additionally, sanctions. Any nation that is operating sanctions or embargoes against other nations, that should be stopped. And as a congressional representative from the United States, from this district, I would seek legislation that would end those sorts of situations to ensure that our focus is on stopping the pandemic.
Yes, we're all suffering in this together. This is happening across the globe.
Absolutely.
So those sanctions need to be lifted. We're suffering together, so we need to come together and work together.
Absolutely. And then once the pandemic has been eradicated, then we can look at the source. We need to make sure we investigate the source thoroughly. We need to make sure that we determine whether or not this was an act of biological mishap, biological chemical mishap. We know that many nations are experimenting with biological warfare, and we need to make sure that what happened here was not obviously something that was clearly out of hand and should not have been dealt with in the first place.
Yes.
And subsequently at that point, then we need to make sure that we put policies in place to ensure that this does not happen again.
That's right.
So we need to be aware as a part of this earth, a part of this world. We need to be aware of what's going on in many of the other countries as well as it relates to the dealing with biological and chemical issues. As a military person, I was aware that many nations are dealing in biological and chemical warfare.